we've talked then in prior classes about this whole introduction to employment law. We've talked mainly, briefly if you will, about litigation, probably more than you wanted to discuss, but litigation, arbitration, and mediation. And now let's get into the heart of what employment law is about. So let's get, and with that kind of background, let's get into the heart of it. And again, what's the first thing you have to have in order to have an employment relationship? You got to have an employer, and you have to have an employee. All right? So what I want to spend the rest of this period on is, who is an employer? Because the big question is, are they an employee or are they an independent contractor? Okay? So everybody heard those terms employee, and everybody heard those terms independent contractor. All right. Why does it make any difference whatsoever? Or does it make a difference? Do we care if they're an employee or an independent contractor? Dave, why?
Yes, because there's different rules are applied to different
Okay.
to different parties.
Yeah, there are different rules applied if the person is an employee versus if the person is an independent contractor. Give me an example of how they might be treated different.
Benefits.
All right. Who do you pay benefits to?
Employees.
You pay benefits to employees. You don't pay benefits to independent contractors. Why not?
Because
Because
they're independent.
they're independent. They're not your employees. Okay, one of the easy questions, right? They're not your employees, so you don't have to pay them benefits. Why else does it matter?
You don't have to take taxes out.
Don't have to take taxes out. Yeah, taxes are a big one. Okay, you don't have to take taxes out. What else?
Less liability in a way in regards to the work and
Yeah.
performance.
No, Day says less liability, and she's absolutely right. If I've got an employee, let's go back to my situation. If I'm truly an independent contractor let's say I'm a painter, okay? And I'm an independent contractor as a painter, and I've got my paint truck and I hit Kyle, all right? Kyle can sue me, but that's a big difference than if I'm working for, say, Pinnacle Sign Company and an employee. Now, if I take Pinnacle Sign Company and I'm their employee and I hit Kyle, guess what? They're not only coming after my $50,000, $100,000 insurance policy, they're coming after whose multi-million-dollar policy, right? Okay? So it makes a difference from that standpoint. So liability, sure. Benefits, any other reasons?
The way you pay them?
The way you pay them. The way you pay them. Who said that? I'm sorry.
Me.
Hey, Crystal. And what do you mean by that?
Oh, I said an independent contractor, you may do it, pay them per job, and then an employee may pay them an hourly wage.
Absolutely. Because you can pay an independent contractor, per job. You may have to pay the employee, you may have to pay the employee an hourly wage, but not only the amount that you have to pay them or when you have to pay them, but laws will require on a regular basis. Whereas you may pay the independent contractor whenever you get his bill. Yeah, okay, I'll pay it next month, I'll pay it the next month. You try doing that to one of your employees, see how quick the government comes in and takes it. So absolutely, all right? So any other reasons? All good, all good, all good. Any other differences or why we care whether somebody is an employee or an independent contractor? All right, so how do we tell the difference? The basic IRS rule now breaks it down into 3 factors, all right? But I've given you in Blackboard, so get your writing utensils ready because I'm going to give you 20. And the reason I give you these 20 before I give you the 3 is because the 3, they break it down to 3 to make it more manageable. It's also easier to teach. But the bottom line is they still go back and look at the 20, all right? So several years ago, the IRS had what were called the 20 factors. And again, somebody been on Blackboard? Do I have, Anna, do I have them on there, you think?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay, they're on there. And so I won't spend a great deal of time on it, but I think it's important to at least run over them to some extent. and here they are, and I'll just shoot them out, and then we'll go back and cover them, or we'll cover them as we are. Instructions, all right? Here are the 20 factors. Number one, the instructions given. What do we mean by, tell me how that determines whether they're going to be an employee or an independent contractor.
An employee pretty much kind of has to do what the boss says, and an independent contractor is his own boss. See, if he wants to go to work that day, he will. If he doesn't, he won't.
Right. And if I'm an independent contractor,
has to go to work every day.
right? Yeah. Okay. And if I'm an independent contractor and I decide not to work for you, hey, that's my decision. All right. So instructions. That's number one. You're going to give more instructions to your employee. All right. What about number two? Is training. How does that come into play? Dave?
You gave the example of being a painter. To a painter, they already know what they're supposed to, how to paint, or what materials to use. An employee, you would tell them, this is what I want you to use, this is how you need to do it.
Okay. We go back to the painting instruction, as Dave says. A painter, truly an independent contractor painter, is going to know what he's doing. He's not going to have to be trained. All right. An employee may have to be more trained. Now, that doesn't mean that, by the way, just because you have one of these factors that leans one way or the other doesn't mean that person is an independent contractor. You look at them in combination. But certainly more training is involved with employees than is with an independent contractor. In fact, there shouldn't be any training with an independent contractor. All right, integration. All right, what do we mean by integration? Anybody know what we mean? That's number three. Anybody know what we mean by integration? Maybe want to take a stab. It's the whole process of integrating or bringing things together, all right? Whereas the employer is in charge of making sure everything works, and an independent contractor, he's by himself. He does it all by himself. He doesn't have somebody else bringing everything together for him, all right? Number four, the personal services. Services rendered personally. How does that come into play as to whether somebody is an independent contractor or an employee? Dave?
An independent contractor can assign work or hire somebody else if they want to
Okay.
for the job. The employee cannot hire or tell somebody else to do the job.
Well, the employer's going to tell somebody else who can do the job. Generally, not always, and you're right, an independent contractor, if I'm an independent contractor, I can still choose to assign it. But if you're let's say it this way. If you hire, let's go back to the painter. I'm a painter, all right? If you hire me as a painter, okay, and Kyle shows up, now Kyle may be a better painter than I am, but if you hired me, who are you going to want to show up to paint? You're going to want me. You're going to want me to render those services personally. Whereas the employer, the services aren't necessary. They're geared toward the job more than they are geared toward the person. You with me? If I hire somebody to make a painting, I'm going to want that person to do it. I want them to render the services personally. Whereas in the employee situation, I don't care whether it's Kyle or Anna or Tom or who it is. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Then you have hiring, supervising, and paying assistants. All right? Who does the hiring in your independent contractor situation? He's going to hire your independent contractor if they have somebody, but then that person may become the employees of the independent contractor. An independent contractor may be all by himself, so you may not have to worry about hiring, okay? Firing. If it goes back to what Darla says. If I'm an independent contractor, can Darla fire me? Well, she can tell me to get off the job, but she really doesn't have control over truly firing me because I don't work for her. Okay? I do a job maybe for her, but I don't work for her like an employee. And then she can't supervise. Okay? Paying assistants. Who pays the assistants for the independent contractor? Yeah, himself. All right. Whereas the employer is responsible for paying all of his employees. Okay? Now, let's say, Day, that you work for, well, let's just say Kraft Foods, all right? And you decide to bring somebody else, and you go to your employer at Kraft Foods and you say, hey, I brought my assistant today. What do you think's going to happen? Yeah, it's not going to work, okay? So the independent contractor can pick or choose whether he has assistants, a lot like you said earlier. The employee doesn't get to pick and choose whether he's going to bring somebody else. And if you don't believe that, try that. How many of you are working right now? Just yeah. Go to your employer tomorrow and say, this is my assistant. By the way, we want you to pay him. Because Grove said it's okay. All right? All right. And by the way, that's number 5, hiring, supervising, paying assistants. Why do I give these? Why are we spending the time on it? You know, sometimes I want to test to see if you guys learn anything. So down the road, you may see a question where you're given certain facts, and you may have to decide and tell me whether that person is an independent contractor or an employee. All right. So that's why we go through this. Okay. So we got instructions, training, integration, services rendered personally, and hiring or supervising. All right. You got those 5. And if we go too fast or whatever, they're also in your blackboard. Number 6, a continuing relationship. Does a continuing relationship show independent contractor or employee? Shows employee, all right? I may need an independent contractor one time, okay? If I need them all the time, then there's going to be a different kind of arrangement, all right? And frequently, not always, all right? Set hours of work. Number 7, set hours of work. Independent contractor or employee? Employee, all right? Employee, okay? You tell them when. Full-time required. Independent contractor or employee? Okay. Yeah, if it's full-time required, if you require them to be there full-time, 40 hours a week, they're going to be deemed an employee as opposed to an independent contractor. All right. Doing work on the employer's premises. That's an interesting, I always love that one. But doing work on the premises. Generally going to be an employee, because as an independent contractor, let's say I'm a plumber. Where am I going to do those? Yeah, I've got to go to the house to do that. But frequently, if I'm an independent contractor, I can do stuff away from the particular premises of the employer. All right. So if I'm a painter and I get contracted, we're not talking about painting the house. Okay, I just get contracted to paint a picture, then I can take that, go somewhere and paint the picture. All right. So generally, doing work on the premises is going to be an employee, but not always. All right. And then number 10, right? The order or the sequence set. What do I mean by one of the 20 ruling factors for the IRS is the order or the sequence set? What do we mean by that? Yeah, Dave?
Telling, if you're an employee, they're gonna tell you exactly which steps it takes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As an independent contractor, you can have your own way of doing it, you do it whichever way.
Right. If you're an employee, your employer will tell you these are the things that you do, and this is the order that you do them in. If you're an independent contractor, you say, no, this is the way I'll do it, and I'll do this step first and this step. Now, sure, may they be the same? They may be. It's all about control. The employer's telling the employee how to do it. You don't tell an independent contractor how to do it. So those are your first 10. Then you get number 11, oral or written reports. If I require oral or written reports, employee. Now, independent contractors frequently provide oral or written reports because it's been good business, but may not be able to demand it. Payment by the hour, the week, or the month. Employee. All right, going to be an employee, not an independent contractor. Payment of the business or traveling expenses. Employee. You're generally not, that's the independent contractor's job to take care of his own expenses. Okay, so you're not always going to pay those. What about furnishing of tools and materials? You're going to be an employee. All right, if I'm the employer, it's my job generally to provide that material that the employee needs to do his job. And then number 15, significant investment. Employer, employee, independent contractor. Huh? I think that's right. What I hear? Independent, yeah. Independent contractor, all right? Because, and give me an example of that. I mean, whatever example you want to take with and run, but
like, I don't know, if you need like a van for the service that you provide.
okay, if I'm a painter, we'll go back to my painting example. If I'm a painter and I need a van to take my tools and go from house to house, I'm the one going to be putting the money in to that van. As opposed to if I'm an employee, who's putting that money into that same van? The employer's doing it, okay? So the more investment you have in it, generally, the more likelihood it's going to be an independent contractor as opposed to an employee. All right, so that brings us to the last 5 of these 20 factors that the IRS had. Realization of profit or loss. Realization of profit or loss. Who's that? Independent contractor. Your employees, they make a salary, and they may get bonuses, but frequently they're not the ones that have to worry about the profit or the loss, unless they just lose if they lose their job as a result of the loss, yeah, they're affected, but they're not the ones who worry about it day in and day out like the independent contractor does. All right, working for more than one firm or person at a time. Generally going to be an independent contractor. All right. There are frequently policies where employers don't want you working for somebody else. All right. When I entered into my contract with the company Hammond's Hotels and Resorts, one of the things, and I really didn't think I needed to put it in there, but I had already signed up for this class. And one of the parts of my contract said that I will devote substantial amount of my working time to the company and every right to do that. I just, out of an abundance of precaution, said, hey, I teach this one class and, I may not be available, on Monday nights or whatever. And so we put it in the contract. I don't think I had to put it in the contract, but it was like, let's put it in there, and there's no problem. But then there's no question down the road about what is substantial investment of time, et cetera. And so generally, the working for more than one place is going to be an independent contractor as opposed to an employee. All right, number 18, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Making service available to the general public. Independent contractor, right. You're working for whoever, whatever, whereas you're an employee, you're not making service available to the general public. It's only for your particular boss, employer. And then the last 2, right to discharge, number 19, right to discharge, and number 20, right to terminate, which really are about the same things. I don't know why they separate them, but who's that going to be? Employee. All right? Now, those came along, and the problem with those, they were really bulky. All right? And it took a long time to go through that list of 20, if you will. And so then what happened is the courts or the IRS said, let's narrow it down. So they narrow it down into 3 basic areas. All right? And I'll just give those to you. Behavioral control, financial control, and then the relationship. And really what I mean by relationship, kind of, what is the nature of the relationship? Is there a contractual relationship? What is there? All right? Behavioral control, financial control, and the nature of the relationship between the worker. All right. What do we mean by behavioral control? If you look at some of those 20 factors, because by the way, while they have this new 3-part test, they still rely on the 20 factors. So if we look at those 20 factors, what's the nature of the behavioral control? What are we looking at?
Instructions given.
Instructions given? Sure. What else?
Training,
Training, okay?
When and where they do their work at.
When and where they do their work, sure.
Setting hours,
uh,
time.
Setting hours, time,
What tools to use?
what tools to use, okay? And that can kind of be a segue. And look, we don't necessarily need to take all 20. You get the picture. Behavior controls the behavior. Who controls that behavior? An employer generally controls the behavior of his employees. Now, going to the financial, and we'll take what Lisa says, because that can be a segue as well, or that can be a financial aspect of it if you have tools. If I have to buy my own tools and have that financial responsibility, I'm an independent contractor. Whereas if an employer buys those tools for me, I'm an employee. All right? So, but what other aspects? So tools can be both behavioral, which tools to use or whatever, but can also be financial in who's providing them. What other financial aspects are there?
Hiring, pay, and
payment of
assistance.
expenses,
Payment of expenses, okay. Tom, you said payment of expenses and what?
Hiring, paying, and assistance.
Hiring, paying, okay. What else?
Realization of profits and losses.
Realization of the profits and losses. Okay, so you get the idea. Again, we won't go through all 20 and say which one applies to which, but you get the idea of financial control. Now, the last one is really kind of what is the arrangement that the parties show to the public? In other words, is there a contract that says we're independent contractors? And the courts will look at that to some extent and say, okay, you say you're independent contractors, but they're not going to stop there. All right. I'll give you an example. I looked at a contract today, and we're not going to go with this contract, but we say this particular service is going to be an independent contractor, okay? And we're going to provide, the hotels are going to provide this particular service. In fact, we'll say valet service, and they're going to provide this valet service. Now, here's what the contract also said. Contract said that this valet company is completely independent company, right? And it said that all of the valet company's employees are those of the valet company, and the valet company is completely separate from us, all right? That's what the contract says. And it says we will pay the valet company no more than what's in Schedule A. Now, I get over to Schedule A, and Schedule A says we will reimburse the valet company for all wages, for all payroll, for all benefits, for 401k benefits. And it's like, whoa. Now, if I present you and you're the arbitrators, or you're the judge, or the jury, and I present you that contract, and by the way, I tell you, you have to follow our policies, and by the way, if we don't like one of your valet people, we fire them or we ask you to remove them. Independent contractors or employees?
employees.
They're going to be employees. All right. Now, does our contract say they're independent contractors? Sure, it does. But no judge is gonna go with that. All right. And that's, so we may call them that, but that's not what they're going to be. So let's get, with that in mind, very briefly, the K&D auto case. What is this about? What is this K&D auto body case about?
Employee or independent contractor?
Yeah, that's the question. Are they an employee or an independent contractor? And the court says what? Ultimate decision of the court is what?
We're employees.
That they're employees. All right? What did the K&D auto body people say they wanted them to be? Yeah, they wanted them to be independent contractors. All right? Why were they ultimately determined to be, well, let me ask you this. Court says they're employees. Did the court get it right or not right? In your opinion.
In my opinion, yes, they got it right.
And why is that, Darla?
Because they were, well, I was gonna say they were told when they could, but now, after
They were furnished
remembering, they
vehicles.
didn't, but
Okay.
to me, they just didn't have a vested investment in the company because the stuff was provided to them. They just had to get in the truck and do the tows.
Okay, well, Ladarla,
So they were, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say what Ladarla says is that they didn't have an investment. This wasn't like, and Tom pointed it out as well, this wasn't like these people were providing their own trucks. All they had to do, like what Darla says, they basically had to get into the truck and drive. Okay?
The only thing they furnished was their tools.
Yeah, they furnish some tools, okay? But you look at these, you're not going to have, when you get into legal decisions, and it's going to be the case when you're looking at managing people and getting into HR, you're not going to be able to have this checklist that says, all right, all 20 of these factors are met, therefore they're an employee. You're going to have some that say employee, you're going to have some that say an independent contractor, and it's the weighing of those that you have to decide if you get into that issue. And that's what happens here. Yeah, there are some factors that suggest they're employee or independent contractors, but the truth of the matter is they're probably employees. And I really think in that particular case, the court went on one particular, I really think what finally zoned in is this. What was K&D audit? Was it K&D? It's K&D. What do they do? What's their business? What's the nature of the business? Anna. Yeah, they're towing. Okay. They're a towing operation. All right. Who were they claiming were independent contractors?
They're drivers.
They're tow truck drivers. Now, here's what I think it ultimately boiled down to in this case, although they had the other facts to look at. Can you operate a tow truck company without drivers?
No.
No. And really, I think that's what the court eventually boiled it down to. It said, hey, get real. You're not able to operate a company without that. And that really, we don't list that as one of the 20 factors, but that I think is what the court looks at a lot. Can you operate this business without it? My wife operates a homeschool. And when she first started out, the person that she first operated it with wanted these teachers to be deemed independent contractors. And that would have been nice from a tax standpoint. It's a nonprofit 501c3. But realistically, can you operate a school without teachers? No. You got to tell them when to be there, what to teach, okay, what policies they can apply, et cetera. And that was pretty much the nature of these. You can't operate these tow truck company business without tow truck operators. And because of that, I think the court says, you know what? No, they're independent, they're employees. They are not independent contractors. Now, one of the things we didn't touch on is, and why did this case come about? Do you remember why this case came about? I mean, what caused this whole, why they even were worried about the distinction between independent contractors and employees? It's unemployment, compensation, and benefits. You have to pay taxes, unemployment taxes, if you will, or unemployment insurance on your, you have to pay an amount of money for your employees that you don't have to pay for independent contractors. Okay? And generally, that's where this issue comes up, is in the scope of unemployment, somebody will file for unemployment and the employer will say, oh no, you're an independent contractor. And the unemployment people say, well, that depends. And frequently, if you're advertising or if you're controlling their advertising, we had one last year that I tried, and I told the guy, we're going to lose this. But he was a roofer, and he would hire these guys as independent contractors. However, when they were on his premises, he made them take, you know, the metal signs that you can put on the side of the truck? He would make them take those off their truck, and he would have them put his sign onto their truck. He would make them wear his uniforms with his logo while they were working on his roof. And guess what the court said? Nah, these are your employees. You're telling them when to be there. Well, I'm not telling them how to do the job. Yeah, okay, we'll grant you that. But you're making them advertise for you. You're telling them when to be there. You're telling them what to wear. You're controlling them. And so while everybody would like to say they're an independent contractor, courts are saying no. All right. Any questions about that? Any questions at all about this whole concept of independent contractor? Okay, what we'll do next class periods, upcoming class periods, we'll look at this employment at will doctrine a lot more closer, and we will look at different torts, what we call torts, and different workplace claims, and that's what we'll look at in the next couple class periods. Have a good week. We'll see y'all later.